We want to. So we wanted to start from the beginning. How you got out of Germany, of Berlin?
Yeah. Well, the beginning was that my father got this permission to return to Berlin from Poland because he needed to attend a chess match in Hungary.
So why was your father in Poland?
Because the Nazis deported him.
And
I go back to the very beginning. There were about 35,000 Polish Jews living in Nazi Germany. The Poles, one nice morning, awoke and said that even though you're a Polish citizen, you cannot go back to Poland if you don't have a visa to Poland. Now, normally, if you're a citizen of a country, you can always go back to that country whenever you wish.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a visitor, if you're a citizen of China and you're living in Chicago and you one day decide, I'm going back to China, you go back to China. You don't need a visa because you're a Chinese citizen. Well, here, the Poles said, even though you're a Polish citizen, you can't come back until you have a Polish visa. Why did they do this? They didn't want the Jews back.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted the Jews out, not to come back. As the Nazi conditions kept getting worse and worse, more and more Jews of Polish citizenship were entering Poland. So they announced that Polish citizenship is not enough to return. So my father, how did this lead to the deportation? The Germans got wind of this and said, the Poles are trying to stick us with the Polish Jews because they're not going to let them back in. So we're going to do something to solve this problem before it becomes acute. We're going to ship all the Polish Jews back to Poland. And that's what caused the eviction of the Polish Jews, the deportation. Now, the deportation of the Polish Jews was the first mass deportation action in Holocaust history. After that, the Nazis did it frequently, but this was the first time. So, anyhow, so you know the story of how my father got the invitation to the chess match in Budapest.
No, you have to tell us the story.
Okay.
So your father got his deportation notice.
He was arrested. 2 policemen came for him and took him to the Ahava home, which was used as a collection point.
And that's what you showed us in Berlin.
That's what I showed you.
Where the officers were standing shoulder to shoulder.
Right.
Yeah.
You saw the place there. So now my father is in Poland already.
So he got his deportation, and this is the deportation notice that we have possession
That's
of.
right. The policeman carried a typewritten deportation notice, which they handed to him and said, please come with us. So he said, well, there, blah, blah, blah. He said, no, look, mister, we have orders to bring you in, so don't argue with us because it's just a waste of time. So anyhow, so he is now in Lemberg, and we are in Berlin. And in Lemberg, in Poland, is waiting a visa for all of us to the United States.
Not in Poland, in Berlin.
In Poland, in Berlin. In order to pick up this visa, he had to come back to Germany.
How did you get the visa to the United States?
Well, that's my mother's brother, may God reward him, who lived in Wyschogrod, Georgia. That's the story with Senator, what's his name? What's the name of the senator?
I don't remember.
Yeah, he went into the bank in Wyschogrod. He
This is Emery.
Emery.
He sent. Did you ever meet Emery? No.
Yes,
I met Emery and Maddie. Yes.
Oh, he was at your wedding?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. He was at. They're dwelling.
So Emery was living in Waycross, Georgia.
Georgia, and he sends us an affidavit for.
Now he was working in the shoe factory.
He's a manager of a shoe factory.
Mm-hmm.
So he he submits a visa, affidavit of $50, which states income $50 a week.
Mm-hmm.
When the Germans got this, they started laughing their heads off. Not the Germans, I meant the Americans. $50 a week is not a serious affidavit, because of $50 a week, should you become wards of the state, you're not going to get very far. So they told them, please to go away, not to bother them with such trivial sums. So he went back. This is still in Berlin, before he's deported.
No. Now you're talking about Emory in Georgia.
Yes.
Not Berlin. This
But
is
they're
Emory
still-
getting visa in
That's
Georgia.
correct, I misspoke.
But the,
Yeah.
So he is now in Lemberg.
Wait,
No, no,
back
no.
up. You didn't finish with Emory. So Emory submitted the affidavit.
So they rejected it.
Yeah.
Then Emery went into his boss, Mr. Rubin, may God reward him, and he told him the story that he has a sister in Berlin, and of course the American papers were covering what the Nazis were doing to the Jews, and he said, and my uncle said, could you please issue an affidavit for them? I guarantee you it will not cost you a penny, but please help us, because they'll be killed. Like, you know what Mr. Rubin did? In 48 hours, he had an affidavit filled out by his lawyer in the amount of $100,000, which by any calculation is more than enough. Well, it was not enough. The Americans laughed, looked at this affidavit. He said, this is not a serious affidavit. We told you don't come back until you. It was plain anti-Semitism, you understand? So he got very depressed, and one day he had some business in the bank. And as I think I mentioned, in Waycross, you don't walk into a bank and get your money and leave. You schmooze. Hello, Mr. Green. Hello, Mr. Brown. Hello, how are you? How's the weather? Are you hot? Are you cold? Schmooze. So he goes into the bank and he schmoozes. He had to withdraw some money.
You're talking about Emory?
Emory in Waycross.
Okay.
And then he had the $500,000. No, it's not $500,000.
You said
$100,000.
$100,000.
And then the bank president says to him, Mr. Unger, Jimmy they called him Jimmy. Jimmy, don't give this matter another thought. Your relatives are as good as here. So my uncle says, well, what do you mean? How can you do that? Do you run the State Department of the United States government? So he said, look, I am giving you my word of honor that they will be here in a short time. So please don't worry about it. Just do your job. You're a great manager of a shoe factory, and I'll take care of the rest. Well, next week came to Waycross, Georgia, Senator. He traveled around the state, and every week he was in a different part of the state where he listened to citizens.
He was the senator from Georgia at that time in 1939.
And chairman of the United States Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which meant that every single penny that the State Department got from the government for their work went through his committee. And he said to my uncle, be at the bank on, I don't know, Thursday at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock or whatever it is, and we'll take care of the whole matter. So, but I can't believe that I can't think of his name.
It's okay, because we can look
we
it
can
up.
look up the senator.
Such a blessed
And this
soul.
was 38 or 39?
This is 30, I think it's 38, it's not yet 39. So the bank president introduces him to the senator, and it never had occurred to Emory in 1,000 years to go to a U.S. senator with this. I don't even know whether he knew that this man was chair of the Senate Relations Committee, of the Foreign Relations Committee. But then they were introduced, and the senator said to him, "Tell me what's the problem." So Emory told him that the State Department has turned down the affidavits, and my sister is going to perish because things are getting worse every day, and blah, blah, blah. And the senator said, "Look, your problem is solved. Don't give it another thought. They're coming. And I just want you on a piece of paper to write down," I remember how he put it, the names of the relatives, their birth dates, and their addresses. And I'll take care of all the rest. So obviously we produced what he asked real quick-o. And suddenly we get a letter from the U.S. consulate, "Will you please come to a meeting at the U.S. consulate on Thursday, April, I don't know what."
You received this in Berlin?
Yes.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
When you refer to an affidavit, that is a request to sponsor someone coming to America?
Yes, an affidavit is a document, as it was used then, which says that my name Joe Schmo, guarantee that by admitting Mr. and Mrs. Greenberg and their children to the United States, the United States will not suffer any financial damage.
Right.
Because if they need anything, I will take care of them, and the United States will not suffer any loss.
Like you wrote the equivalent for Michael?
So, it's okay.
Sorry.
It's a separate issue.
Separate issue.
So
Yeah.
you got called to the consulate in Berlin.
And suddenly they are treating us like we were the Secretary of State of Great Britain. Please have a seat. Sit there. Sit there. Do you need another seat? How about coffee? How about soda? And we are there with Mendel, and the whole purpose of the visit was a medical exam.
Oh gosh.
Now, was your father already deported at that point?
No.
At this point, your father was with the family?
That's correct, in Berlin.
In Berlin. So the whole family, all four of you went to the
We
consulate?
went to the consulate, and we were terrified because there is no way at that time that anybody could tell that he had epilepsy. Unless he had a seizure right there in front of his nose. Then we knew what was up. So we were naturally terrified out of our wits. And with HaKadosh Baruch Hu's help, nothing happened. Now, Mendel didn't get a seizure every day, so I'm not saying this is so miraculous. He had seizures, I would say, on the average of between 1 and 3 a week. So being for 12 hours without a seizure is not mind-blowing, but on the other hand, it is extremely useful. And so they gave us all very thorough physical exams by German doctors working for the State Department. State Department hires these people all around the world to work for them. So after that, my father is deported. And he is sitting in Lemberg trying to get back to Germany to pick up his visa.
The visa came
from the State Department to the U.S. consulate in Berlin.
But he had been deported before the visa arrived.
That's correct.
Oh boy.
How long was the period between the time they called you to the consulate for the medical exam and the time the visa came?
About a month, maybe 6 weeks, something like that. And we were elated, of course, a visa was on the way, and we understood that it's working for us now. The chairman of the Senate, can you believe that? The chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee working for the Wyschogrod family. He didn't know Wyschogrod from the hole in the wall.
So now your father's in Lemberg.
So he's Lemberg, and he's trying to get
Which is
back
in Poland.
In Poland, because a friend of his on the deportation train said, "Where are you going?" He said, I don't know a single Jew in Poland." So he said, come with me. I have a big family in Lemberg, and we are friends. We made friends on the deportation train. That's a pretty strong bond. So my father said, okay. I mean, where is he going to go? So,
wait, who is this?
His father.
So he goes to the German consulate in Lemberg, and he said, here I have this visa from the United States. Don't forget, Nazi policy at that time was to get the Jews out of Germany, not to kill them. So he says to them, how long would it take to transfer the visa from Germany to Lemberg? He says, oh, no problem at all, about a year. That year was the year the war broke out. Of course, we didn't know that at the time. But a year, a shtickle paper to send it, post office, it takes 3 days, 2 days, 4 days. A year? That was bureaucracy, and B, anti-Semitism of the worst kind. The State Department was known as the most anti-Semitic operation. First of all, most of them were graduates of these fancy secondary schools.
In Germany.
In Germany. And they didn't want no Jews we had enough Jews. The Germans are taking care of the Jewish problem. Why should we interfere with their good work? So he was in big trouble. He couldn't get, for many reasons, in the Lemberg Yiddish newspaper, that there's a big chess tournament in Budapest. And I have his invitation here. I mean, not here, but among my papers. So he sits down, and he had a beautiful handwriting, and he wrote beautiful letters. And he writes, saying, his name is Paul Wyschogrod, you must know my previous work, and I would like to participate in this chess match. And they immediately sent back a seal with a big royal seal of the Hungarian Chess Federation. We would be honored and happy and everything else for you to come play at this tournament. With that invitation, he goes to the Polish consulate in Lemberg.
The American consulate.
Polish.
Polish consulate.
Polish consulate.
Polish consulate.
So the German.
Wait, why would there be a Polish consulate in Poland?
The German consulate.
The German consulate.
The German consulate about transferring the... Yeah, okay.
Right. You
The
want
German
any business you have with the German government goes
Yeah.
through the
Yeah,
Polish consulate.
The German consulate in
Go
Poland.
through the German consulate in Poland.
Yeah.
I don't know. Germany had consulate in the largest cities in Poland, but there was a lot of business intercourse between Germany and Poland. So the consul said, well, I'll look into it. A week later, he gets a letter from the German government. We will be honored to have you play, and we will do everything we can to facilitate your travel. Because my father wrote him that if he wants to participate in the match, he has to train. Like boxers, before you fight, you have to train for a regiment for a week. He said that's what he cannot go play without, it'll be a disgrace for Hungary. So he must train, and he can only train by access to his books, chess books.
And where are his chess books?
In Berlin. And they fell for it. They said, we are offering you a 4-week visa to
return to
Germany, but after 4 weeks you must return to Poland. If we left Germany via Poland when it finally came time to leave Germany, because we were afraid if we leave via France, even though we had a U.S. visa, they could say, well, you don't have a visa to France, so you cannot enter France. So
Paul has a question. What is it, Paul?
yes, we left.
So just to recap, your father had gotten deported to Poland, and he got into a chess tournament in Hungary, and in order to get with you guys so you could all go to America,
Right.
he tricked the Nazis by saying he needed to get his notes in Berlin, and he met up with you there and went
That
to
is
America.
exactly correct. He came
Okay.
back to all the Jews in Germany were flabbergasted. There were some people who were let back after the partition of Poland who were very wealthy, and the reason they gave, they had to liquidate their assets. They needed their signatures on certain papers. You know, if you owed a huge department store, you couldn't just blow goodbye to it. You had to sign that you're handing it over to the German government. So now here comes a little side issue. My father gets a visa for 4 weeks, takes the train in Poland to go to Berlin, comes to the Polish border. They get very suspicious. A Jew is allowed back into Germany? Well, that's not, doesn't sound right, okay? So they searched him, body search. In his pocket of a suit, they found a letter torn into little pieces. And they sit down, several SS officers, to put the letter together. What is he writing? To whom? Why? The likelihood of the letter being anti-Nazi was quite great, because after my father was deported, he was not exactly friendly to the Nazis, you understand? So he wrote many letters in which people say, may they drop dead, they throw me out and this and that. And if the Nazis get that, he's dead. He criticizes the Führer. Well, you know what? He had nothing wrong in the letter. There was not a single anti-Nazi word in the letter. And they were absolutely flabbergasted. But they had nothing to blame him with. He had a legitimate visa, and what are they going to do? I mean, they can't contradict Heinrich Himmler and say to him, you made a mistake in letting this bomb back. Well, anyway, he comes back with a 4-week visa. After 4 weeks are over, he and I appear at the Berlin police department, and we show him the letter of invitation to the chess tournament, and he says he needs another 4 weeks for more training.
Why didn't you leave in that period?
You asked me that question a million times. I don't know the answer to that question. My father was crazy. He was not eager to leave. He was not eager to leave. He liked it in Berlin. Everybody was begging him, get the hell out of here. Get the first train, go via, you can go through France. He didn't trust that because he didn't have a transit visa through France. So they're going to cause him trouble. They put him back on the train. He didn't want any of that. So they gave him a prolongation, another 4 weeks. When those 4 weeks were over, what do you think he did?
What?
He asked for another 4 weeks. This is psychopathology. And then the final time I went with him to the police president of Berlin, the head of police for Berlin. And we come in, Heil Hitler, Heil Hitler. Oh, and I was a little kid. I was absolutely thrilled, you know, to be in this military context with the Heil Hitlers going back and forth and clicking their field. I didn't realize that this was life and death, that this was a death curse that was hanging over us. They let him through.
What do you mean they let him through? They gave him 4 more weeks?
No, at the last visit, they looked at it and they said, Herr Wyschogrod, Sie haben 24 Stunden für das Verlassen des Reichsgebiets. You have 24 hours to leave the Reich territory. Should you still be on Reich territory after 24 hours, criminal proceedings will proceed against you. You know what that means for a Jew in Nazi Germany, criminal proceedings? All you had to do was smile wrong and you were dead. You're going to be found. So he and I went to the railroad station and got 4 tickets to Warsaw. And an hour before Shabbat, we got on the train. And Mendel is carrying on big time. He is not going Shabbat. There's no reason to go Shabbat. All the rabbis don't know what the hell they're talking about. There's nobody hurting anybody in Germany.
What did the rabbis say again?
They told him to get on the first train that they can get on. Mm-hmm. They can get a ticket on and get the hell out of Germany. But Mendel didn't.
So they said you should travel on Shabbat.
Of course, that's the whole point.
The rabbis
now,
said
these
that.
rabbis, these were very orthodox rabbis, do not lightly tell you to go violate the Sabbath. But being sane people, they were not totally insane. They said these people, you know how rare a U.S. visa was, walking around Berlin with a passport which had a U.S. visa in it? I mean, this is insanity. This is pure insanity. So we get on the train and then starts the business with Mendel. At every station he's jumping off. And some stations he actually got off the train physically.
Why?
Because he doesn't want to ride on Friday night. He has to go to shul. So I said to him, you're on the train, you can't go to shul here. Yeah, you get off at the next stop, there'll be a synagogue there.
So what did your parents do?
Well, they held him physically, psychologically, and in short, he did not jump. He did not stay. And then the train pulls into Warsaw Shabbat morning. But before that, the SS at the border conducts an examination of each piece of our luggage, the content of the luggage, piece by piece. They went through a handkerchief, a brassiere, a book. That the assumption was that when Jews are leaving, they're all billionaires, and they all have tons of diamonds and gold, and that's what they're carrying out, and we must stop them from robbing Germany of its legitimate property. So the SS man and we stayed in a corner of the customs shed, and he is examining piece by piece, for which I don't blame. Those were his orders. He didn't invent that. He was told that if any Jews come through leaving to Poland, examine, make sure they don't carry valuables. So the train pulls into Warsaw, and my father, by this point, had an address of a pension in Warsaw, where German Jewish refugees were kept. And we took a droshky on Shabbat morning, vivid to me as I live today. The whole city was going to shul. We had never in my life on Shabbat ridden or... and my father, for once he was right, said, look, we are here, we can't stay at the railroad station all day till this evening. For one thing, we could be picked up by the Polish and sent back to Poland. They can decide...
Sent back to Germany.
To Germany. They can decide that our visa is not legitimate. Prove to them. Go argue. It's their country, right? And that's what they say. It's what you have is not legitimate. Well, so we all went to sleep on Shabbat around noontime, because we had been up all night dealing with the SS man who was going through this stuff, and we were dead tired. So I tell you another interesting little tidbit. Mendel said, yeah, he wants to go to sleep too, but he only will sleep in his old bed, in a one-man bed. So we said to him, look, there are 4 of us. We will put 2 in each bed. No, he won't have that. He will not sleep with another person in the bed.
Excuse me? What city are you in at this time?
Warsaw.
Warsaw, okay. For some reason it was thinking Paris.
We had to argue and debate, and don't even ask. He finally agree to sleep in a bed with another person. Shabbat evening, Shabbat is out. And then dot, when Shabbat is out, the whole Jewish Warsaw comes to life. People open the stores, people sell things, people buy things. It's a big operation, Moitzoi Shabbos. And we go out and we see a man who is standing yelling, Hitler Chazer, knepflach was bedarf nicht gewahrt. Hitler Chazer, Hitler a pig, buttons that you don't need a wife.
What?
So we didn't know what this means, button that you don't need, Hitler Chazer. First of all, when we heard that, we were so terrified. If in Germany you go around selling Hitler Chazer, you know what happens to you. So we bought it. We bought the Hitler Chazer and knepflach muss bedarf nicht gewahrt. What's Hitler Chazer? It's a sheet of paper about this big, which if you fold it in a certain way, which if you looked at the pictures, there were 4 pigs. But which if you fold it in a certain way, you saw a picture of Hitler. The Jews, of course, hated Hitler. And somebody invented this pig.
Like Mad Magazine, at the back.
Yeah.
Mad Magazine does that all the time. That's where they probably got the idea.
From Hitler. And the buttons.
Then Hitler...
Wait, what are the buttons?
Yeah, I'm coming to that. It's knepflach man darf nicht gewahrt. So my father goes over to me and says, wusstest du knepflach man darf nicht? So he takes out the one and he shows that if you're missing a button and you don't have a wife, if you have a wife, she will sew you on the button, right? But if you don't have a wife, they had a button which had a protruding metal piece, and you pushed it through your material, and then you squeezed the button, and you had a button, and you didn't need a wife. So I asked you, is that something? It was high Polish technology. Not every idiot can think of that. What are you talking about? Knepflach was bedarf nicht gewahrt. We were laughing. You were straight out of First of all, you're straight out of Nazi Germany. Number 2, nobody thought the Germans are going to invade here tomorrow.
By the way, can you give us a date at this point? So when are we talking about now?
We're talking May 39. I have in my papers an exact dating where each event happened. And if you wish to devote some time to that, I'd be glad to go through that. And it's very historic, important documents.
So what was the next thing you did? So it's now Moisei Shabbos.
Yeah, so we had to go back to sleep.
And you have your paper with the Hitler's picture and the chazas.
Oh, right. But the Polish Jewish Committee for German Refugees was not open Moisei Shabbos. The Polish Jewish operation had opened a special office for Polish Jews coming from Germany. They were given help, they were given food, they were given a place to sleep, they were given all kinds of advantages that the Polish Jews didn't have. So next morning we went to the Sunday morning, to the Polish Jewish office and explained and showed them our U.S. visa. When we showed them our U.S. visa, they went like that. They had never seen a U.S. visa. You understand? Not every German Jew working by on Nalewski was carrying a U.S. They were mostly Polish citizens who had come back to Poland.
Yeah.
So they put us in this pension, which was very nice. It fed you 3 meals a day. Are you giving me orange juice?
Yes.
Thank you so much. And you know what is the thing that I most remember of staying at that pension?
Yes.
Which will never leave me, and may God fix this thing. While we were eating our meals, in the morning, lunch, supper, they gathered in front of the building, maybe a dozen and a half Jews waiting for food. They didn't get any food from the committee for German Jews in Poland. And there was a Jew with a long beard and a wife with a shaitel, and maybe 6, 7 children, all hungry. And we took out our food to them. We made sure not to finish everything that we had. I cannot tell you that we had seen many terrible things in Berlin. You see Nazis and killings and things, but you did not see hungry children in Berlin. That it just didn't exist. But it certainly existed in Poland. The poverty, Tamar, the poverty of Jewish families who ate 1 meal a day, maybe 2 meals a day, so the children could have a little more. Even as I speak, I'm on the verge of crying. It's unbelievable what these Jews were put through. And then on Monday, the big office opened, and we walked in with this U.S. visa. And do you know we had a ship ticket in 2 days?
Who paid for it?
The American Joint Distribution Committee, which is now today one of the agencies of the UJA.
So the Polish committee arranged it through the American committee?
Well, the American committee sent them money to help Polish Jews emigrate from Poland who had places to go to. If you had no visa to go any place, they were not interested in you.
Well, there's nothing they could do.
There was nothing they could do for you. But if you had a visa, and it didn't have to be, USA was of course prime property. But most people didn't have US visas. Most people had Venezuela, Puerto Rico, places.
Or other places in Europe, Belgium.
Very few European countries took Jews. Yeah, maybe some did. Very few. So basically...
So what'd you do next? So it's Monday morning.
Monday morning, they tell us we can move into the pension. And it was funny, there was a man staying there, a very tall, stately man, who told us that he was walking to Moscow. So we thought that he must be crazy. Walking across the Polish-Russian border, you know how that is guarded? But he was convinced he's going to do it. I tell you what it is in a way, it's a psychological thing, which maybe even to a degree will explain my father, to a degree, not completely. When you are in such danger, you do things that are dangerous. Can you understand that? It's a kind of rebellion against the danger. So that you're still in control, that you're not simply a slave of what people tell you to do. I want to walk to Warsaw, to Moscow. Whether he ever made it, I mean, I don't know. He obviously, if he went, he got caught in the war. Because he was walking on the road and the Germans were moving into Poland.
So when did your family leave Warsaw?
4 weeks after we arrived.
So you stayed in the pension for 4 weeks?
4 weeks.
And then you went by train to where?
And then we had a little party in the pension. All the Jews staying in the pension joined the party. We were going to the U.S. You know what that meant to a Jew then? And Then they gave us a ship ticket from Gdynia to London.
Where's Gdynia? In Poland?
Gdansk. It's right next to Danzig. It's the German city right next to Danzig. And
but it's in Poland.
Yeah.
it's in
Gdansk is where the Polish Revolution started.
Yeah, the anti-communist.
Right. So from Gdansk to where did you say?
London.
To London.
It went through the Kiel Canal. That was the incident where I walked around with a tallis bag. I was on board, you know that story. I was on board the ship, and on the pier was a German soldier marching back and forth to make sure that nobody got off the ship to return to Germany. When I saw this, I ran down to my cabin, took my tallis bag with a big Moldovin on it, clutched it under my arm, and walked alongside the soldier, which was not a smart thing to do, because there's no point in, with a U.S. visa in your pocket, getting this German soldier antagonized. Not a good idea. My parents didn't know about it. I roamed around the ship.
So I'm trying to understand. So you're on the ship on the something river. What river are we on?
Kiel Canal. It's a Kiel Canal that cuts.
And one side is Poland, the other side is...
No. This is Germany proper, both sides Germany.
Both sides are Germany.
Yes.
So this is, you have to pass through Germany in order to...
Through the canal. You save a lot of travel.
This is around, instead of Denmark, right?
It's below Denmark.
It cuts across the peninsula of Denmark.
The Low Countries, exactly.
And here's Pucci marching around with his tallis bag to antagonize the Nazi guard, the German guard.
Which did not happen, thank God. He did not get antagonized. He saw the Moldovin, but I don't know, he was not given orders. Then the ship arrived in London, and we had a place to go, to the London Jewish Refugee Committee. Because all these organizations were keyed up to save Jews who could be saved. And those could be saved who had visas somewhere. To Chile, to Wyschogrod, Tanganyika. But if you didn't have a visa, it was not a question of money. They couldn't do anything for you. They couldn't buy you a visa.
So you went there.
In Warsaw, in London, 3 days. Then they gave us a ticket, and they looked up when the ship is leaving, the Laconia, the transatlantic ship. And they saw 3 days, we must leave London the evening before on a certain date. And that's when we saw the Queen. You know what that meant to us? The Queen of England returning from her visit to the United States, with the two princesses sitting facing the king and the queen, and the enthusiasm of the public. But it was a different enthusiasm than the Hitler enthusiasm.
Where did the boat leave from?
The boat went from Liverpool. From London we went by train to Liverpool. That's another train pulls into the pier in Liverpool. Each pier was built so it could hold trains, including commercial trains,
Freight trains.
Freight trains, that's the word I'm looking for. So our train pulls in, and you know who's standing there? The whole crew of the Laconia, Cunard White Star ship, with white gloves. And each one comes into the train, picks a piece of luggage. All the luggage had to be marked with the cabin number and the name of the recipient. And the politeness of the crews was just delightful. And we were on sea 10 days, and the ship landed in Boston. That's another interesting thing. Our first stop was Boston.
I didn't know that.
And you never knew that. And then the ship came down to New York, and Emery and his uncle were waiting for us on the pier.
Emery and his boss, you mean?
No, his the uncle, whom I haven't mentioned yet, my mother's uncle, my mother's brother,
Was here in America.
was living in Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Oh, that's the one in Elizabeth.
That's correct. And he took us in for the first few days.
What's his name?
His name, Hecht. My mother's maiden name is Hecht. Well, no, that's not correct. My mother's maiden name is Ungar. That's her father's name. Hecht is her mother's.
Your mother's maiden name.
That's correct. I'm still working on the senator. Walter George. Senator Walter George, may he live in heaven and enjoy the privileges of the saints. Senator Walter George. When we told people Senator Walter George is working for us, they looked at us as if you're crazy. You're God crazy. First of all, nobody in the Jewish community knew the name Walter George. But then when they started looking him up, they saw that he was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. Can you have a better deal with that? Walter George could get a dog into the United States under visa. That was the Berlin we just came from. When I
You know, that's a hell of a story.
It's all written down, you know.
I know.
Is it?
Have you read it?
Long time ago.
Long time.
When you wrote it first.
Yeah.
Did you ever publish this story?
No, I never published them.
You
Maybe
just
I
wrote it for the
should.
family. I have a copy.
I should read that.
You just heard it.
True.
Unbelievable, isn't it unbelievable? And also the thing I remember very vividly is how kind and understanding and good Polish Jews were to us. We were called the Nazi-plated, the refugees from Hitler. And they never were in good shape. We were the refugees. We are walking around with an American visa in our pocket, and they are the victims.
But you didn't know.
We did not. Well, that's not true either, because they all said, you are very lucky, your life is being saved. They knew what was coming. It was in the air. Everybody smelled it. Everybody knew that Hitler, above all, wanted war. That was his thing. If you want to be a great statesman, you have got to conduct a war. If you don't conduct a war, you're not a great statesman. End of story.